Many people think that companies around the world should be sustainable. Many people think that companies should be carbon neutral and run on 100% renewable energy. Unfortunately, today just 1% of Fortune 500 companies are doing so. But let's imagine a world in which not 1%, but 50% would do so. Wouldn't that be wonderful? No, because the other half would still drive us over the cliff. As a global society, we would still fail. We are trapped in the wrong paradigm, and I witnessed how this paradigm came about. 15 years ago, I started my first industry job and managed what soon became the world's biggest solar cell production. We felt like pioneers. We felt at the beginning of a new era. Wind and solar energy had become viable. They started to be deployed at mass scale. The first companies in municipalities were demonstrating that it was possible to run exclusively on renewable power. The slogan 100% renewable was coined. We thought that as a society, we would achieve 100% by getting every single one to 100%. We thought that we as a society would become carbon neutral once every single one was carbon neutral. We could not have been more wrong. When I joined Ecosia, the search engine that plants trees, we followed exactly that approach. We exclusively procured the finest quality of renewable energy. We credibly were operating as a 100% renewable company. We were even convinced that our main suppliers were using 100% renewable energy, and that therefore our supply chain was 100% renewable as well. But with time, we learned that some of our suppliers probably were significantly less renewable than everyone had thought. Suddenly, we faced the question whether we really wanted to assume full responsibility for our supply chain and whether we were ready to pay the full price for it. And we decided to do so. I kicked off a project to build our own solar rooftop installations. Those systems would feed enough renewable energy into the grid to make up for the emissions of our suppliers. Less than 1 year later, our searches were powered by 100% renewable energy, including our supply chain. We were far ahead of others. It took us another year, though, to realize that this was not only boring and unambitious, but by asking praise and recognition for it, it was actually counterproductive. We were fueling the wrong paradigm. We were not doing more than just our fair share. And we stopped there and pointed fingers for everyone else to do theirs. One day during a meeting of 100% renewable organizations, I recalled a story about a group of citizens. Those citizens, 20 years ago, had rebuilt the landmark church of Dresden, the Frauenkirche. They managed to do what governments had not been able to do for over 50 years. And they did so on time, on budget, and largely with private funds. The key to their impressive fundraising success was counterintuitive, but very simple. It proved to be much more simple to convince a previous donor for a second donation than a non-donor for a first one. It suddenly struck me that we needed to follow the same strategy in order to avoid climate breakdown. Instead of focusing our efforts on those who lag behind, we needed to raise the aspiration level for the early adopters. We needed to convince 100% renewable companies to strive for 200%. At 100%, they just stopped contributing to the problem. They should now aim to become part of the solution. They should stop from striving for sustainability and instead become regenerative. At Ecosia, we quickly decided to do that ourselves. I started another bigger project in order not to only cover for the emissions of our suppliers. We want to feed the entire electricity demand in twice. Once for our searches and another time to crowd out dirty power plants. Less than a year later, Ecosia searches began to run on 200% renewable energy, including our supply chain. And Ecosia does more than that. By using our profits to plant trees, Ecosia is also much more than just carbon neutral. We are carbon negative or carbon green. Every search, on average, ends up sequestering 1 kilogram of CO2. Imagine Google, Microsoft, Apple did the same thing. What if our activities and your public pressure persuaded them to strive for more than carbon neutrality and 100% renewable energy? What if they and others chose to become regenerative as well? Then suddenly our future would not depend on everyone else's goodwill on everyone else's ability to execute. It would not depend on the weakest link. We would stop being taken hostage by the profiteers of the fossil era or by indifferent bystanders. We would not need to beg them anymore to move. We would get our fate back into our own hands. Our climate action plan suddenly would have a chance to become resilient. Our efforts to avoid climate breakdown have been operating under the wrong paradigm. We will not be successful if we approach this like building a house of cards. Get to 100% renewable energy company by company until no one is left. Instead, raising the bar for leaders from 100% to 200% will not only make fighting climate breakdown much more effective, it will also give us our freedom back. It will get us out of the helplessness with regards to climate breakdown deniers and bystanders. We ourselves need to stop being complacent once we stop being part of the problem. And we cannot let others get away with that either. We need to step up from sustainable to regenerative. We need to become part of the solution. We need to raise the bar from 100% to 200%. When it comes to climate breakdown, neutral is not enough. Actually, on the burning issues of our age, being neutral is totally unacceptable. Join with Ecosia and others, raise your bar to 200%, and demand from big companies and political leaders to do the same.